Welcome back to Collegiate Sports Connect. I'm delighted to be joined today by Andrew Schoepfer, Senior Associate AD for Revenue Generation and Business Management at Providence College, and Wade Longmire, Director of Collegiate Markets at Affinaquest. Wade, Andrew, thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Well, as everyone knows, the conversation continues to be about the change and the challenges in college athletics right now. The bar that it takes to be a competitive Division I program continues to get higher and higher. Andrew, you've been with the Friars for a very long time in your career. How have all of these changes recently, NIL, Alston, the house settlement, et cetera, how has that impacted the strategic thinking and planning for Providence College when it comes to revenue generation?
I mean, to say that it's impacted us profoundly is probably the understatement of the year. It's one of those things that as an institution, we're one of the smallest Division I schools that are trying to compete at a high major level. And athletics are really a core part of who we are as a brand in our institution, and fortunately on the good side of the equation, our president, our CFO, our board of trustees are all on board with trying to give us the resources we need to compete at that high level because athletics is such a core part of who we are as a school. But and they know that it really drives admissions, it drives donor and alumni relations, and even our relationship with the city and the state of Rhode Island. We just did an economic impact study where we're driving $100 million of revenue back to the state annually with what we do. So there are a lot of people who are impacted by our success in what we do. But the flip side of that coin is now that the cost of trying to get that done, that revenue has to come from somewhere. And so that's where we're having to think every day of, what are we doing? How are we redefining our relationships in ways that we might not have wanted to previously just because of logistics, because of, just concern over, we don't want to be too greedy or ask for too much. And so that comes from everything of hey, are we not just in the ticketing for sports business anymore? Are we doing the concert business? And so we have a big Zach Brown band coming in doing a concert for us next month. And, we're trying to raise a lot of money for NIL off of that one. Are we rethinking about our fees and how that structure is going forward? And then on the donor and the sponsor partnership side, it's, how do those conversations go? It's not just an ask anymore about how are you giving to Providence College? It's how are you giving to the collective? How are you giving as a sponsor? How are you giving as a donor? And we have a lot more stakeholders in that room having that conversation. So it really is just night and day different. And it's, the need has forced us to professionalize very quickly over the last few years. And fortunately, again, we have the support that we're keeping up, but the business is just night and day different from even pre-pandemic as a market to where we are today.
There are two buzzwords that you used in there, relationships and professionalization. And that brings in Wade. Wade, give us the bird's eye view. How have concerns for Affinaquest partners evolved over these recent years? And how are your university partners, but also Affinaquest as an organization, staying nimble so that you can continue to provide some game-changing support for partners?
Yeah, on a macro level, right, you zoom out and the problems that Andrew and team are is what everybody in this industry is facing. I think of 5 years ago, pre-COVID, the biggest issue we would have been talking about as an industry would have been the worrisome decline of ticket buyers, right? And less people coming to our games, less people buying season tickets and signing up for that. We were all talking about how to compete with the stay-at-home experience and big screen TVs and the lazy boy. Here we are in 2024, and that issue is still one we talk about, but now there's 5 or 6 others that I think you could argue from an order of magnitude or even greater. So you go to the industry conferences, NACTA and whatever, we were talking about revenue strategies. We were talking about fan acquisition strategies. So to use that term that you and Andrew decided, relationships matter, right? And I think, the critical piece we talk about here at Affinaquest is data is a key weapon that you need in your arsenal to fight the battles of today, right? Data can be a currency with which you buy trust with your fans, with your constituents, and with your community members. So the better that you can understand folks, the better you can meet their needs, the better you can tailor their message. And we're helping people talk through how they can use data on their own campuses to fight each of those challenges. So more problems than ever before, but we still think data is a key piece of that equation, which Andrew and others have shown off to at Providence.
Andrew, how was data about fans and, of course, donors being tapped early in your time at PC? You've had a long tenure there. And at what point did you and your team decide, hey, we need to mix it up. We need to enhance our focus on increasing the use of data, not just for ticketing, but also for other revenue generating efforts?
Yeah, for sure. And fortunately, I think one of the early advantages we had with all of this is that I joke that data is my love language. And so this has been just a personal area that I've loved to delve into and have seen a lot of upside in from early on in my career. But it was definitely a very garage band aesthetic early on, where we're just working off of exported Excel sheets and trying to keep track of things from mostly just ticketing, because, that's a channel I came up through. But as we sort of essentially got on the other side of the pandemic and came back to live events, the world had changed in a way that was really advantageous, that we had to think, oh no, we need to do something different than this. We can't handle the volume of data that's coming in now. And that was essentially shift to mobile tickets. With fans now comfortable using the mobile structure that we had never been, we went from essentially 15% adoption of mobile tickets up to 85%. And with that chain of custody of tickets, we're able to see each and every person who's getting that. And our known fan number is going from like 30% of the building now north of 70%. So as those numbers were changing, we were just ingesting way more data than we had capabilities of being able to deal with. And so that led us to think, okay, what else can we do with this? And then seeing the upside of, now that we have so much data within our system and we have some of the basic reports down, what can we do now to think about data warehousing, golden record management, understanding that each record in our system needs to be one person, and that we need to understand that holistic view of that customer. What does that look like across donations, gear purchasing, ticket buying, email, and other engagement pieces like that, to make sure that, we know that whole story of that customer and how we can engage with that person on an individualized level. And that's the piece of things that really made the difference for us, is in that pivot of, okay, now we need to set up that structure so not only I could see it on my desk, but then everybody else in our department could see it as well. So those were, I think, some of the key factors of like the environment really changed for us. And then with these increasing revenue demands and seeing what was coming down the road, needing to get more teammates involved and off the sidelines, and not just people kind of sticking their finger up in the air and kind of making a guess of what they thought might work, when we were figuring out pretty quickly we knew what worked.
Walk us through the relationship with Affinaquest. For those peers across the industry who aren't seeped in data, if that's not their love language, why is it so crucial, and why is it so helpful in eventually generating more revenue to have a partner like Affinaquest and their CRM?
Yeah, absolutely. And so early on, I think we actually had a lucky advantage that our institutional advancement folks across campus already had a pre-existing relationship with Affinaquest. And so as we were thinking about different ways that we could, formalize our data structures and get more people, involved, we were able to see like, hey, there's a partner who can help us out, who's in the space, and that, we can think now bigger picture beyond just athletics as well. Because I think as we're talking about in athletics and our own donors, that was always kind of one of the, I think, underlying tensions that a lot of departments have of like, who's a athletics donor versus who's an institutional donor. But us being such a small school, I think for all the financial challenges that causes, one of the advantages we have of, the people across campus are just a handful of people that we can have a conversation with. There aren't these big bureaucracies. I think that a lot of other institutions kind of get stuck with their silos. So we can kind of hash out some of these things of like, what is this unified vision of where we want to go? How do we think about our donors holistically as an institution, not just as an athletics donor or, a soccer donor or a basketball donor? And so that kind of made it easy for us. And so once we kind of had those conversations and kind of figured out where that roadmap might be, it was really easy for us to just sort of plug and play with the tools that Affinaquest brought to the table and kind of think about like, how do we golden record management? They walked us through the whole process, and now understanding that just like each customer in our GRM system is just one view of one person. We're not having to worry about duplicates. And that just makes all the efficiencies so much easier of knowing, the person who's buying gear, who's making a donation, and applying the predictive models on top of that can then really help identify who is that next wave of customers who we're not talking to now, who we really need to, and then being able to parse that down of like, who is the right person who should be having that conversation. So if it is a sponsor conversation, if it's a IA conversation, that person may be a great candidate for our nursing school. Like, we are happy to share that because we know that that relationship comes reciprocally with the nature of our campus. So, that's sort of how the nature of Affinaquest works for us. And I mean, it's been really a blessing and a great partnership to have, because it's not just us in athletics who are benefiting, but it's us as an entire institution who are really able to take advantage of this.
That alignment across campus is so unique and I think so desired by so many institutions, no matter what the level is. Wade, tell us a little bit more about some of those common questions that new partners come to you and Affinaquest when they're wondering, okay, I know I need to make a change. I know that I can be more effective with the way we do business here, but I don't really know where to start.
Mm-hmm. I think that is the question. Where do I start and how do I execute? Right. And one, also kudos to Andrew's and team at Providence. You all can hear the way he talks about this, I think, is a way that we're all learning to talk about this in this industry. And they're a pleasure to partner with on this. because at the end of the day, Andrew makes me think of art and science, right? In our industry, both are required, i.e. you need the intuition, you need the human level of professionals in our industry that know how to sell tickets or raise donations or take care of fans and everywhere in between. But you also need the science, right? The infrastructure that helps pull together data or other technologies or other systems that you use to make everything in sync, right? In our industry, we're always going to have a cap on the number of bodies that we have on our team. There's going to be a cap in some ways on the expertise that we have, right? So when a new school or university is talking to us, we often are very thoughtful about what is your starting point. And it may look different for different universities. Are you working with campus advancement right now? Is this just an athletics only effort? What are the systems that you're using today? Where do your people come from? And the good news about what we do is you can kind of tailor or configure that starting line, right? The horizon for everybody is to be sprinting and maybe sharing data across campus and finding new opportunities from the first time someone sets foot on your campus, but you don't get there overnight, right? And the last thing I want to touch on, and something that comes up with a lot of our clients, Andrew mentioned that known audience member. I think that's a really good way to think about it in terms of starting point. You could think of Affinaquest as someone who helps you find hidden fans, i.e. fans that are hiding in plain sight, right? So think of the example. Someone's buying your merchandise but doesn't have season tickets. They're coming to all of your games with a friend of a season ticket holder, right? Maybe they're on campus in some other way. We all know these experiences because we're people too, right? And we all have those relationships with our own alma maters. At the end of the day, we can help you uncover who those people are, where they're interacting, and who might next be your best conversation. That infrastructure, when you put it in the hands of Andrew or someone like Abby or someone on his team, comes to life, right? Because then they can jump in and welcome them with the Providence message and tell them what they have going on campus. We've had to evolve as Affinaquest because sometimes to help people get started there, they need actually a little bit more hands-on support. So that's the only thing I think we've evolved in the last 2 years is we sometimes give a body, right, virtual remote support to help you guide data strategy. And oftentimes it becomes teach a man to fish and, they take over in years to come. So a lot of exciting things there, Steph. You're going to have to stop me talking on that.
Both of you guys having so much fun with this data conversation. Well, here's another fun headline. Providence College experienced a record fundraising year, raising $10.7 million over the previous best of $7.4 million. That's a pretty significant bump, Andrew. What made the biggest difference between those fundraising years?
I mean, I think one of the things is just our athletic director, Steve Napolillo. He's a fundraiser by heart. He really focuses on relationships. And that's just one of the central things that we always want to make sure that as we're doing this work behind the scenes and kind of understanding capacities and understanding kind of people's propensity for contributing to us, that we're not losing sight of they are people and you're going to motivate them not by what things say on the paper, but how you can tell that story and how you can tell that narrative of what we're trying to accomplish as a school, as an institution. And, he's a PC guy through and through. Kevin Connolly is also in charge of fundraising for us. Both of them are PC guys who love this institution and are able to just articulate that story and that vision so well that makes a lot of the difference with the donors as they're engaging with us, as they're seeing what's possible, as they're meeting our coaches, Kim English and Aaron Bath, just absolutely unbelievable personalities and have shown what this institution can do with the resources that we have. I think that's really helped take us to another level as we're then trying to refine down those conversations and those talking points and figure out what are those added areas that we can make those contributions. Some of it out of need, the fact that we just need to raise more money in order to make ends meet for what we're trying to do. But then just that sheer love of the institution and the way they're able to articulate that vision, I think it's been really key in how we move that forward.
Another part of this headline is that Providence College generated $8.5 million in ticket sales. Men's basketball sold out the season ticket allotment for the first time in program history and had a 99% renewal rate for the upcoming season. Obviously, we love our Friars men's basketball. How has the use of data and your shifting strategies for fan engagement made an impact here?
Oh, I mean, it's been incredible. And I think the thing about those numbers that always catches me is that it wasn't preordained at all. I mean, coming into this season, we had lost our longtime head coach. There was a lot of uncertainty around the program, even just again, in terms of what do we have in terms of NIL, who's coming back? We lost one of our star players halfway through the year. And so, we faced a fair amount of adversity trying to get to that point. And so, just really excited for the team and what they were able to accomplish with that. But a lot of it is just about efficiency. And, we're, I think, better resourced than a lot of schools at our size are. But at the end of the day, we don't have the resourcing that I think a lot of even the P4 schools do. And so every touch point for us matters, and we have to figure out who is that next best person to contact. And so whether that's, our outbound sales team, getting them their populated lists of like, who are those fence sitter accounts, who are those at-risk accounts that they need to make sure that they're getting an extra touch point or two in. How are we communicating via email, and how are we making sure that we are just sharp and on point with our strategy communications and we're not wasting opportunities there. And so it's really that nuts and bolts, but it's getting it down to that individualized level so we can know what is that next best activity to get somebody over the line. And so to kind of retain everybody we did through the, transition and coaches. And then even this past year when we were an NIT team, to still be able to have that trust of our fans, because we were able to have so many individual conversations, even though, we don't have necessarily the staff to have all those phone calls, but we were meeting people where they're at essentially. And I think that really got us to that point where, the vision that Steve articulates, how we're able to kind of imbibe that with everything we're doing, but then communicate to people across all of our channels. That has just made such a big difference for us. And, pairing that with our pricing analysis and with some of the predictive tools that Affinaquest has given us, and we're able to fine tune who are those people are and where do we need to be positioning things, made a big difference for us. And now we're, continuing to now try to figure out how do we continue in this thing with a wait list, how do we engage with a concert, how do we bring some more of these things online so it's not just the men's basketball success, but making real progress with men's hockey is probably 2 to 3 years out of selling out on season tickets at this pace. Women's basketball is now in the same spot. So letting that success of men's basketball bring everybody else along with it.
Well, as we wrap up here, I want to bring it back to the core of what we do, which is the student athletes. We're talking about data. We're talking about knowing and meeting our fans where they are, the professionalization of the department, the relationships with campus. But how is all of these changes, how is all of this focus and increased use of data, how does that trickle down and impact the student athlete experience?
I mean, it's a good question. I think one of the biggest ways that it impacts our student athlete experience, first of all, it's the obvious, they get to play in front of sold out venues. I think that's the big thing of when they're walking through that door and they have, a Friar head on their chest, trying to, compete for Providence College in the city, like they can feel that. And it's not just in the venues, it's around town. They feel like rock stars walking around campus. They feel like rock stars around the city. So being able to be successful at what I do, that impacts them. And, in a former life, I was a student athlete myself. And so kind of knowing what that experience is to, walk on the field and to be able to compete at that level, that's why I got into college athletics. And so being able to be in my position now and understanding that what I'm doing is helping them have an unbelievable experience that, they're able to, like I said, compete for championships and get an education and all the positive stuff that comes with a college experience that sometimes I think gets lost in the conversation of NIL and high level athletics and what's going on. Like at the end of the day, all of our student athletes are people and they're human beings. And, for them to be able to take these lifelong memories with them, is something that like I take great pride in. And so I think kind of stepping away from the data piece of things, it's that like student athlete impact is just at the absolute core of what I do. And it's what brings me pleasure to get to know our athletes, to help them provide this experience and to, just make an impact in their lives forever. And even in the lives of just the rest of our students at college. And when we were talking about the economic impact study, so many board of trustee members put their hands up and said they came to Providence College because of the NIT run that the team made in 1961, 62 in that era. And so like knowing too that like, it's not just our student athletes, but it's also their classmates and it's all the future Friars who, are seeing our teams compete on TV, who are coming to games here on campus. And, it's making them fall in love with this institution and make them want to be a part of this community. So, I love that concept of impact and what we're doing and being able to see that in kind of the very localized level with our student athletes, but then as kind of our economic impact study showed, and those ripples that kind of go out to our city and our state and even, nationally as we go with things.
Wade, close us out here. Tell me a little bit about the impact, the student athlete experience, that side of what Affinaquest can do for partners.
So I think a lot about talent when it comes to this question and talent within the athletic departments. So listen, we need more Andrews in this world, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of good people in our industry, but we're seeing a large turnover rate in collegiate athletics, right? I think Sportico put out an article in the last year and a half where it's over 40% in our industry. And I think that speaks to the challenges of the times. Our student athletes suffer, right, when we don't have talent in the institutional effectiveness that can exist within athletic departments. So when you have efficient processes, right, and you're managing data the right way, ultimately, that means that these universities are taking care of their fans in a better sense and providing higher levels of service. That's going to lead to more revenues. That's going to lead to more resources that set up a stable base for these student athletes in the formative time of their lives, right? Now, how it will affect them going forward, I think we're going to see more and more with collectives and NIL. But for today, right, it's making sure that we have the right drivers in the seats, right, and keeping the right talent. And that means being effective with what you're doing there. And kudos again to Andrew. You mentioned that transition period with your basketball coaches. That is truly a testament to what can be done here. Wins and losses are always going to impact our effectiveness in this industry, right? But it's about maximizing the highs and minimizing the lows. And you can do that with efficient business processes.
Could not have closed it out better. Well, Wade with Affinaquest and Andrew with Providence College, thank you both so much for being here, for giving us all of this crucial insight into how you're using data to enhance not just the fan experience, but the student athlete experience. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here.
Thank you.